It's funny how a movie that I didn't ever really even care about that much is the movie that got me to start a YouTube channel. This is the first one, and that's pretty crazy. Yeah, I want to talk. I want to talk a little bit. And I've had images in my head. I've had thoughts for a long time. I've had people in my life tell me, basically, as long as I've been around, that I talk too much. I have a lot of thoughts about things, and I should get those thoughts out into the world. The obvious solution, some people say go for a podcast, but the obvious solution was to start a YouTube channel and to talk about it. And I watch YouTube basically every hour of every day. So for some reason, this felt like the catalyst. This felt like the one to do. I want to talk about the movie Together that recently came out this year, starring Dave Franco and Alison Brie. We're kind of in this nice little body horror cluster in the mid-2020s, which I appreciate. I saw The Substance last year. I'm trying to think of any other movie off the top of my head. But then you got your movies like Barbarian. You could even say that like Weapons was kind of like a teensy bit. Body horror on screen for the masses. It shows that there's a little bit of a shift, or at least a desire for what people want. Because I remember when Malignant came out a while back, Infinity Pool, which I really enjoyed, even though it seems like that didn't really grab hold of people. There is a market for this kind of movie. And when I saw Alison Brie and Dave Franco as, the selling point, the poster for this movie, I was like, I'm gonna go watch that. There's nothing stopping me from watching that. I saw Bring Her Back earlier this year, and Bring Her Back was one of my favorite movies of the year. In fact, it might be my favorite movie of the year. That's not to say that I haven't been watching other things. I've been watching less because I am not enjoying what's happening in theaters as much as of late, but I definitely really enjoyed Bring Her Back. So I went in with kind of overly inflated expectations, I think, because I didn't expect to like Bring Her Back as much as I did. Really enjoyed it. And then Together was kind of put in a weird place because I like Alison Brie and Dave Franco more than I like random Australian actors and Sally Hawkins, who was absolutely incredible. Anyway, this isn't a review for Bring Her Back. So Together, I can provide a little bit of plot analysis. I'm gonna do this in a way that is spoiler, like there are spoilers. I'm not gonna try to hide that. I might do the classic YouTuber thing of click to this point, but I don't think so, because the way I talk about things, spoilers are gonna be woven throughout. This movie stars Alison Brie and Dave Franco. As I said, they are a couple who are kind of deep enough into the relationship that you would think that it would be progressing to the next stage of life. I think it's described that they're in their mid-30s. They've been together for probably about, it was like 8 to 10 years. They are not married yet, wondering why, kind of noticing the flaws in each other as people, but they still love each other. They still are dependent on each other. They've built a life together. And the catalyst for the start of this movie is that Alison Brie has just gotten a job. That's another thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna call them Alison Brie and Dave Franco the whole review, because I'm never gonna remember their names. There are people in movies that, in fact, I would argue that most big name actors, I just see the face and know their name as the person, and it's hard for me to really lose myself with someone in a role. That's just why I don't love the trend of big name actors having every role, but I also get that it's for publicity and you need a certain amount of marketing and a certain amount of appeal. So that's a whole different conversation that we could talk about. I'm going to refer to them as Alison Brie and Dave Franco because that's who they were the entire time I was watching the movie, and it didn't destroy my immersion because they were a married couple. They act like the way they are in my head in real life. That's how it's gonna be. So Alison and Dave are kind of in this awkward, they talk about the exits of relationship, like you take like the 1 month exit or the 6 month exit or the 3 year exit, and then if you're past those points, you're kind of like, uh-oh. And I think that this is a point where you're really in that sunk cost fallacy area of like, I've invested so much of my life in this person, I love this person, but are they the one? Because there's some burgeoning conflict that you see that both of them kind of feel like the other one is holding them back. I would say that's more in the case of Alison Brie feeling held back by Dave Franco in not so subtle dialogue by her friends being like, well, is he the same man that you met 8 years ago? So that's the tension that we're set with. Starts with one of the most uncomfortable scenes I've ever seen. No ring, just clamshell hands as she's like crying and getting up. He's like, oh yeah, absolutely. Terrible. I loved it. That was a great way to start it. Some of that midsummer cold open horror energy. Shot of Dave Franco's like dead parents, but it's Alison Brie, and there's some trauma, there's trauma built in. Good start. I really liked how it started. This movie started to lose me It started to feel a little bit corny. It started to feel a little bit predictable. Not that anything about it was bad. I think it was a directorial debut. For a first movie, impressive. There was some impressive camera work. There was some impressive comedy moments. We are starting to see comedic horror that's still serious. It's not like Marvel, like, well, that just happened. It happens a little bit that way in this movie, but it's done in a way I think that still honors the tension that horror can build. I will say I do think that I was a little annoyed at times by the way that the characters were acting. Like, well, how would I act if things were going this crazy? But there were so many situations where like their bodies are physically stuck together, and if that happened, you would be confused, but you wouldn't immediately jump to like, well, our bodies are sticking together. But like when it happens like 4 or 5 times in different situations, and they're just like, well, it could have been because I was, stressed about work, and it's like that's not what's happening. Your lip connected to his lip, and then your fingers connected, and then you got stuck inside her when you guys were having sex. That's not normal. But I also do think it ties kind of in to the way that the ending worked for me. When I left, the second I walked out of the theater, I was disappointed with the ending, and I was disappointed with how the movie wrapped up. When there's one other character in the whole movie, and it's like, that's actually the evil guy. It's like, really? There was one other character. There was Dave and her and like some auxiliary like extras, and then a teacher at the school who only is the other character. They did red herring it where it was like he's not a romantic threat, he's an existential, relationship threat because of what he represents. But then that also kind of muddies the waters based on how I view this movie. Again, I like to talk about those moments of levity where they went with a little bit of a different direction, like they're being dragged across the floor to each other, and the line where she's like, it's actually called diazepam now. Like in the middle, as much as I wanted to not like that, I really thought that the delivery was good, the writing was solid in that, and I thought it was pretty cute. But here's the interesting part. If the bonding is purely, we are now just being pulled together to be one physical being because horror movie, I like it less. But I started to analyze it from the perspective of what is this movie trying to talk about? What is the message? What is the point? What is the argument that it's making? And once I started doing that, I actually found the ending to be quite powerful, because one of the running themes throughout the movie was that they were codependent, and the horror of it was that it represented their codependency. They both knew that they weren't good for the other person, and they both knew that they needed to grow as people and not rely on the other person and not use that love that they so-called felt for each other as a reason to stick around and really like examine themselves and go, am I a whole person on my own? And they didn't have the strength to do it. And I think the body horror element of it did muddy those waters a little bit, but I do appreciate that lesson. And I thought, well, the ending was actually really powerful, because Alison Brie's character throughout the movie is kind of the one that gives off a little more of that independent sense. She is the one with the job. She is the one with pushing her life in a direction. She's the one that's consistently calling him out for his inability to mature, his inability to step up, even to chase his own dreams. He'll advocate for himself and he'll say, I want to be in this band. You could be like, that's an immature thing to want, to be in a band when you're in your mid-30s and never have a gig and whatever. But she's still even supportive of that. And she's like, no, go on the train, get to be with your friends, start, recording music. If this is what you do and this is what you love and this is what you feel, do it. And he doesn't even have the strength to do that. Now, is it because he's being inflicted with this horror movie, demon, church, this cult beast thing? Sure. But I think if that's representative of his inability to actually chase his dreams, and he's using that as a crutch as why he can't do it and he has to be with her and he has to, rely on her, then I appreciate that. So that's the message that Alison Brie's character is giving off throughout the whole thing. But ultimately, they end up merged together. So I said, what is that saying? The way that she ends the movie is she's willing to die, because she recognizes that if they are together, and both of them are alive, the transformation will occur and they will be blended into one person. She's already been basically killed, so she's like, I'm willing to die, which I think is powerful, because it could represent in the real world, outside of the horror movie context, a theme of her willing to sacrifice her own happiness in order to separate them so that she can live a life and he can live a life and they can be happy separately or grow or be people separately, or even if it's not in her benefit, but it's to give him the benefit of a real life. And I thought that was pretty powerful. But he doesn't accept that. And now I've seen some conflicting arguments on Reddit and stuff and Letterboxd about how like the blood was going into him anyway, so he knew that this would happen no matter what. Like even if she was dead, he would just be fused to a dead body. But the way I'm choosing to see it is he didn't have the strength to even accept that, because he knew it wasn't about him. It was about the fact that he couldn't handle being without her at any point in the movie. Like whether it was moving away to start a new job, whether it was he didn't really know if he wanted to get married because he was scared of it, but the idea of losing her was more of a scary fear than, like, there's so many examples throughout the movie of him making so many decisions based off of fear and based off the inability to exist on his own, in his own body, in his own head. So when the opportunity was presented between lose her and gain myself, or we both lose each other into each other, it's treated as this beautiful romantic moment with the light shining through and their hands kind of growing into each other, and it becomes this, you know, this body horror thing. And it's kind of cute because it's like, oh, this is the beautiful moment where they become one and they've accepted it and they've embraced it. No. That's the scariest part of the whole movie, is they're in a relationship where they were so unable to fight for themselves individually that they ended up having to resort to this morphing of a person, and now they are the creature that is one and of itself, and it's going to continue to attract more people. The ending was a little corny, like the very, very end, where it was like her at the door and then the parents, and it's like, what are the implications of that? But I don't want to go into that. I don't think that matters that much. That was just a nice little, you know, punch at the end. So I actually really appreciated that, and I hope there would be, again, movies nowadays, movie discourse is difficult, but I was hoping there would be some discussion about that, and I think if I were to, you know, troll through Reddit a little bit, there would be some discussion pages and theories about that. And I think generally people responded well to this movie. I don't know if they necessarily picked up the same message. They didn't get the same things from it that I did, and I can appreciate that. I think maybe people just were like, oh, that's cool. They ended up as one person, and I liked seeing, you know, their hands go together. And one thing I want to say before I wrap up is I appreciated how unsexy this movie was. There was one sex scene, and even then, the whole time you were kind of like holding your chair and being like, oh no, is it gonna happen? Is something, and then it does, so you're like, I feel right for having that opinion. Like, first of all, not being able to have sex and like lack of sexual chemistry, and they're going through a dry period and all the things was a big component of this movie, showing that their relationship wasn't in a great place. I think, you know, sex and relationships is complicated, but that was what that was trying to say. And they weren't communicating, and they were having trouble, you know, balancing how their internal trauma and their internal issues were affecting that. I was worried partly that they were going to be like, oh, we got a husband and wife who were in the same movie together, let's have them kiss a whole bunch and smack their little parts together. And I kind of liked that anything that was sexy about the movie was kind of inverted, and you were like, oh no, I don't like it anymore. I don't want to watch this. I don't think this is what I'm liking. Or if it is, you're kind of like waiting for the shoe to drop and it's going to be bad. So ultimately, I want to highlight that I really appreciated the theme of this movie. I think there were some elements of it that were a bit amateurish compared to the level of quality for a second product that I saw from the Philippou brothers with Bring Her Back. Like, again, it was just so recent that's what I'm comparing it to. And even Weapons. I thought Weapons was a little overrated, and maybe I'll get into that in another video, but Together was a simple product, small cast, simple locations, simple shots. I would say the writing and the chemistry of the main characters really kept it afloat. I think they're just generally likable people, so that helped. But I don't think any of it was outstanding, but I did really appreciate the movie. I do think that more movies like that need to exist, where it's not a big franchise, it's not a big, undertaking. It's just a story that has an interesting element, and it doesn't hit with everybody. It's not going to be a massive success. It's probably going to make a little bit of money, and it's just an auteur's vision, and it's not that deep. And I liked it. And I left being like, I will go and see movies like that every week. I am not going to go see, How to Train Your Dragon, the live action, or Lilo and Stitch. I'm going to wrap up by saying I enjoyed it. Wasn't my favorite movie of all time. Wasn't my favorite of the year. I got to think of like a good rating system for movies, because this is my first YouTube video. I got to come up with something good. Stars or out of 10, or are we going to come up with something fun? I'm going to give it a, God, I don't want to say 6, 7. I'll give it a 6. I will give it a 6. But where some people think 6 out of 10 is like a disgrace and like the worst thing you've ever seen. 6 out of 10 to me is above average, more than positive, worth watching. Closer to a 6.5. We'll say 6.5. That's perfect. We'll say 6.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This is my first video. If any of you are, if anybody watches this video, if anybody hears me say these words, that would be insane. What's something fun I can give you guys? I have a pumpkin here. I bought this for Halloween vibes to try to make my apartment more Halloween-y. So I hope you enjoyed the pumpkin, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm gonna now do a ton of editing and get this out. All right, peace.